Good day! In today's video, we will be examining the first cartoon appearance of that robotic mastermind, Brainiac. So yes indeed, let us go!
Yeah! So, we start off at the Big Top Circus in Metropolis, where Superman is showing off for the crowd, lifting elephants and stuff, and where Lois Lane is giving the radio play-by-play of the event, which I don't know how exciting she could really make it sound, right? Oh look, there's Superman lifting things, yippee hooray, I wish you could see it. But problems! The ringmaster is telling Superman of all the circus animals that have gone missing in the last 2 days. Up to and including 2 silverback gorillas, which Superman was supposed to fight against. Animal rights groups be damned! Later, Lois Lane is Lois Laning around the place, looking for a story with the missing animals, when she notices some green-skinned guy shrinking down the elephants and putting them into an invisible box. That's really odd, that can't be part of the circus act. And if it isn't, man, it probably should be, because that's pretty fantastic. She points this guy out to Superman, so of course naturally Superman tries to punch this guy's lights out, right? So the day is oh wait, what? This green guy has some fantastic force field around him, man. It's completely impenetrable. So seeing as he doesn't see Superman as a threat, he shrinks Superman and Lois Lane down to size, puts them in that invisible box, and puts them into his fancy flying saucer. But he's not a total jerk. He tells us his entire story, which is kind of nice. His name is Brainiac, and he's from the planet Mega. Unfortunately, all the inhabitants of the planet Mega killed themselves off in an atomic war, except for some scientist named Professor Heckler who built Brainiac. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you. Brainiac is a living computer that looks like a humanoid, so I guess he's like a Terminator. Like a cyborg, No, not a cyborg. Just a flat-out robot. Brainiac's mission is to take a bunch of animals from Earth to repopulate the planet Mega, which may or may not be short for Megatron, but we'll watch and see.
Meanwhile,
so Superman breaks out of his confinement to confront Brainiac, but shucks, wouldn't you know it, Superman forgot that Brainiac has that force field. Whoops! So Superman's gotta think, right? How is he gonna get past that force field to get to Brainiac? And by Jove, he's got it! He gets Lois Lane to use her portable radio transmitter and to turn that transmitter on every high frequency full blast, which some people would describe as the equivalent of listening to Yoko Ono, and Brainiac has the same reaction of listening to said performer. His brain shuts down! Overload! So now that Superman can get his hands on Brainiac, Brainiac turns himself invisible and leaves the ship. Not sure why, man. If you're invisible, that's quite the advantage for an attack. But, he just walks away. Maybe he's a pacifist at heart. I don't know. Nonetheless, that's pretty darn convenient because Superman uses Brainiac's shrink gun to re-enlarge himself and Lois, so that part of the day is saved. Superman figures, NASA could learn some stuff by examining Brainiac's flying saucer there, but, the flying saucer explodes! Probably to prevent, it being examined, and wait a second, all those animals were still on board the ship! Oh, well, it's great that Superman and Lois are saved, but oh man, that kind of puts a damper on things. That, and the fact that Brainiac is still out there and he's invisible, man, so who knows what the hell he's gonna do next, right? And where? But I guess who cares, because that's another episode's problem, right? So with that is the end of this fantastic episode.
Yeah, not too shabby. Not too much to it though either, right? Pretty basic, straight to the point kind of cartoon. But it does feature one of Superman's most formidable foes, Brainiac. So in this episode, you can kind of see a bit of how dangerous Brainiac can be. A bit watered down, but still, man, the dude's pretty resourceful. But still, like, it is pretty awesome to see him, right? Because when you think of Superman's most dangerous foes, you know, like, Brainiac is right up there. But it also shows how smart and resourceful Superman is, right? Most of the times he can just throw hands at a problem, you know, and it'll be solved, you know, with a broken nose or something. Well, definitely more the broken nose. It is Superman after all. But still, you know, the fact that Supes has to use everything at his resources in order to defeat this guy, including Lois Lane, you know? But that in itself makes a pretty awesome episode, right? If Superman can't use the usual methods, man, like, there's actual conflict happening. But Supes, man, he's been around the block, around the galaxy, pretty much. He's learned a few tricks here and there. Actually, that sounds kind of bad, but you know, he's figured out a lot of things, and he has no ego to bruise either, right? Like, he basically handed Lois Lane the win in this episode, which is pretty awesome. Superman saves her butt a lot of the time, so it's pretty awesome that she can return the favor, right? But indeed, you know, if you haven't seen these episodes, you know, check it out if you want to. They're pretty good. Pretty good. It seems like a basic story, but it's still pretty awesome, and it's pretty short, so they can only cram in so much, right? But speaking of cramming things in, I do have a bunch more information of some behind-the-scenes things and some more learnings about Brainiac over here.
So yes, indeed, Brainiac! A pretty unique and original character that was a complete copy of a different character. What? Yes! I guess I should explain that, hey? So in the Superman newspaper comic strips, there was a story starting in April of 1958 about an alien with a computer mind named Romado. And this Romado guy has been taking and shrinking cities for preservation, including a Kryptonian city called Dur-El-Va. Also, Romado was the last of his species. Everyone else on the planet was killed in a cosmic collision. Which is astounding, right? Like, he was the only person from this space-traveling species to be off-world at that time? Wow, he should buy a lottery ticket, eh? But that character and the story seemed pretty cool, so it was very quickly repackaged and retold in Brainiac's first appearance, which was Action Comics number 242 in 1958, which was basically 6 months later from that comic strip story. This isn't the first time that a story happened in the comic strips before the comic book. Sometimes it's just like, you know, is this story good enough for the comic books? Let's see how people react to it in the newspaper, and if it works out, bada bing, bada boom, it'll be put in Action Comics, right? But the story in Action Comics was pretty much the same, just slightly different. It was a story about an alien named Brainiac who has been taking and shrinking cities, including a Kryptonian city called Kandor. The interesting thing about Action Comics 242 was that Brainiac in the story was not a robot. He was a living alien being. But Brainiac being a living person completely changed in Brainiac's updated origin, which was in Superman number 167 in 1961. With that updated origin, Brainiac is no longer a living person, he is a machine. So basically, he's from the planet Kolu, right? The machines on that planet rebelled and imprisoned the people because the machines believed that the Koluans were too inferior. Which is kind of basically like the Matrix or the Terminator, you know, but in superhero story. And these machines built Brainiac, the humanoid robot, which is pretty interesting, right? But, you know, why the change? Well, it turns out that the name Brainiac already existed before his debut in Action Comics. So there was this educational computer type kind of toy called Brainiac Computer Kit, which, you know, was a registered trademark. And for some insane reason, nobody at DC Comics knew about a computer named Brainiac, and, you know, no one looked into copyright names, which really they usually do, right? So, you know, for kind of funsies, DC Comics changed Brainiac to a computer instead of a living person to kind of reflect the Brainiac Computer Kit kind of thing. I guess that appeased the patent holders enough, you know? So this featured episode reflects that new robotic Brainiac origin. And other than that, this episode is loosely based on Action Comics 242. But still, small tweakings here and there. Like, for example, in the comics, Brainiac is the last species from the planet Kolu, his people being wiped out by a plague. Whereas in the cartoon, he was built by the last survivor of planet Mega, Professor Heckler. And for Brainiac's mission in the comics, Brainiac's plan was to shrink a bunch of cities and re-enlarge them on his home planet, Colu, so he can repopulate the planet and rule over all the inhabitants as their emperor. Even though, like I mentioned before, the plague would probably still be on the planet, so that might be a pretty short reign. But in this episode, Brainiac is repopulating Mega with circus animals. I guess you start with animals first and then move up to humanoids? Huh. In the comics, Lois Lane and Clark Kent were on an experimental rocket ship when they first met Brainiac. In this episode, it was at the circus, which is equally incredible. So yeah, different, but kind of the same. The similar things would be that Brainiac in both stories has that impenetrable force field, he did have Superman shrunk down, and he does have that fancy flying saucer ship. So either way, from the time of this cartoon episode, Brainiac is still a relatively new character. There's only so much about him that you could retell in a cartoon episode, so we'll just kind of leave things there at that, even though from this point on, man, in TV shows and whatnot, you get a whole lot more Brainiac, things change a lot more with him, but he's still that impressive character, so it's all hip. But yeah, man, with this, that, those, and the other things, I guess let's buy it. Also, if you guys are interested, I created my own superhero show and I have the first episode out already. The Adventures of the Density. So if you guys would like to check it out, I'll have a link above here and a link at the end of the video for you to peruse there. Yeah, right on, and there you go. So thanks for watching the video. I hope you liked it as much as I did making it. Also, feel free to check out the source material that I featured in this video. And if you want to leave a comment on anything you may have liked or things I might have missed in this, feel free to do so. Or anything else, just to say hi. That's cool too. And other than that, have a great day. Thanks.